you're aware, this meeting will be recorded. It is recording right now, and it will be available on our YouTube channel tomorrow, and we will send a link out with the recording or with the link to this recording so you can watch it if you missed anything or need to recap on anything in your own time. Also, one last thing, I've said this before at previous town halls, but I will put a link to our Parents of Holy Trinity Facebook group. So if you're not a member of that already, please feel free to join. That is a great way for you to stay abreast of Holy Trinity events, as well as get to know other parents in that group. I think that's all I got. Without further ado, I don't know, Mr. Bob, if you have, I'll hand it over to you if you have some words that you would like to say to our parents tonight.
Thank you, Charles. Just very, very excited, as Charles said, about the beginning of the school year. Teachers have been here working hard. Staff members have been excited, and with a little bit of the feel over the last couple of days of students in the building, we're very excited to get the year underway. So without further ado, I know Dr. Payton has many topics to cover. I don't want to delay. So I am here if there are any questions that you think should be addressed to me. But other than that, thank you for the trust that you have in us in sending your child to Holy Trinity for their education.
Good evening, HD parents. I actually won't be super long tonight. We do have some topics we want to discuss. We want to give you the opportunity to ask us any questions that you might have. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Today was our juniors and seniors came in for orientation today. Their orientation is a little bit more straight into the point. They've heard me, they've heard our teachers and staff members give all of the typical Holy Trinity cultural speeches. This is what it means to be an HT student. What are the HT values? Many of them have heard that for the last 3 to 4 years. So we allow our juniors and seniors to simply come in, grab their Chromebooks, take their ID photos, and get their locks and lockers, the basic necessities of orientation. What ends up happening, though, is that because these are our older students, and also because many of them last year were e-learning, today was the first day that many of them have seen each other since March of 2020. So there was an orientation in itself of students reconnecting with other students, and that will continue tomorrow at convocation. This is a time of year, first day of school, where we renew ourselves, and Holy Trinity comes together once again to start a new year. So we will have convocation tomorrow. I'll talk a little bit about that later. First and foremost, if you have a new student, a transfer student, this will be their first year at Holy Trinity, then you parents should have gotten a Chromebook agreement that needs to be filled out and brought back to us. And then we will give your student their Chromebook. We handed out about 7 or 8 of those today. That's about right. I think that's about how many transfer students we have. So please sign that, give that to your student tomorrow, and they'll bring it. There were several juniors and seniors today that, for whatever reason, did not take their student ID photo. We will schedule another day where they can get their photo taken, because we want all of our students to not only have their IDs, but to also wear them every day in the building. All of them should have gotten their lock and lockers. We'll be using lockers this year. We did not do that last year. So students will have a place to keep their books and personal belongings, and when the weather gets a little bit cooler, jackets and coats. As I do for all of these meetings, I like to start on an update with COVID. At present, over 96% of HT employees are vaccinated. Very few, maybe 2 of us, are currently not vaccinated. And I believe one of those 2 will be getting the vaccine very soon. So I hope that puts parents at ease, at least from the standpoint of the people that our students will be dealing with have been vaccinated against this virus. Now today, we also held a vaccine clinic in room 102. It went very well. I haven't gotten a final report on how many people got vaccinated, but I was happy to see both students and parents. I think I saw one grandparent today getting vaccinated in our building. They will return on September 15th to give the second dose of this vaccine, which was Pfizer, to those students who got it, their first dose today. We will also be looking into booster shots, as all employees will be due for one in mid-November, and hoping to bring the same agency back so that they can perform that. Now, we're still keeping all of the precautions with COVID intact, but I will be honest with you, there's one that's going to be a challenge for us, and that is social distancing. Now, the CDC has kind of been a little bit more flexible with their guidelines on social distancing this year, going from 6 feet to 3 feet. And I think that's because everybody's back in the building. And we're a small building, and we can definitely perform that in our classrooms and in some assemblies. Let's face it, it's going to be tougher to do it this year than it was last year. Last year, on most days, we had less than 90 kids in the building. Social distancing then was a breeze. This year, we will have all of our students in the building. That includes things like assemblies, like the one we'll have tomorrow, and lunch. In lunch, we will sit 5 students to a table. Now, we left the shields up to offer some protection, but let's face it, kids will be eating in the cafeteria, and their masks will be down for about 20 minutes. This is another reason why we are imploring with parents. If your child is not vaccinated, this is a real good time to get that done. We see every day on the news that the country, in particular in certain regions, have been challenged greatly by COVID-19 because they're fighting against masks, fighting against the vaccine itself. They want to go back to normal, and I do too, but we're going to do it safely at Holy Trinity. And I want to give you my word on that because that's what I want as well. I want to make sure that all of our kids are as safe as they can be. Last year, we were very successful. I think we only had 2 infections of students for the entire year. We feel that that was a combination of all of our precautions and cleaning protocols that we put in place. We had the building cleaned every day, as we will again this year. Common surfaces like doorknobs and bookshelves were also cleaned every day, as we will again do this year. The building was deep cleaned in the morning and at night by our janitorial staff. The only thing that we're not doing this year is taking temperature checks. But what we will be doing is that we will be asking your students, do they feel okay today? Parents, we need your help in this. If you know your student hasn't been feeling well, has symptoms, it could be of COVID, could be of the common flu, cold. If they have those symptoms, they need to stay home. Do not send them to the building. Because if we discover their symptoms, we're going to be giving you a call and you're going to have to come pick them up. Now, common question that I've been getting, Dr. Payton, what if there's an outbreak at Holy Trinity? Will the school close? Will we go back to e-learning? What are our protocols there? It's a great question. As of right now, and I believe we are in solidarity with all archdiocesan schools. As of right now, we are not offering remote learning. All students are in the building. Now, when that pledge was made, that was some time ago. That was earlier this summer. And obviously, things have changed a bit. I've been in contact with the Archdiocese, and that is something that we're going to discuss at the next meeting. But as of right now, all students will be in the building for in-person learning, which will start tomorrow. Now, we do have some students who come down with the virus. We want them to go home and self-quarantine. That means that they'll be home for 7 to 10 days and until they can bring us a negative test. Just like last year, no different. However, that means they will be out of class. Now, their homework and in-class assignments, sure, we can email that to them. And if they're in an English course or any course where they have to read chapters in a book, they can do that. But in terms of loss instruction in person, there will be some loss. So I want all parents to be aware of that and do everything you can to keep your students safe when they're not in school. Ensure that your student is not going out, not wearing a mask, or going in locations that may not be protected. That happened last year with many of our e-learning students, where we saw an uptick in infections for students who were staying home 5 days a week. Won't have that luxury this year. So this will be a partnership with the school and our parent families to keep our students as safe as possible. Now, on to some other news. Uniforms. This week, no uniform. We will start uniforms on Monday. Those of you who still need to go out and purchase uniforms, you have an extra few days. But for the next 3 days, we don't have to worry about uniforms. Now, that doesn't mean that your student can come to the building dressed in things that are not appropriate. We don't want gang paraphernalia. We don't want anything too loud or too vile. What they did today was perfect. And that'll be fine for this week. Next, some of your students may have come back and said, I was in the building today and it was awfully hot. And it was. This is an old building, and only about 30% of our classrooms and rooms are outfitted with air conditioning. What I can tell you is this. This typically goes on for the first couple of weeks of school. But as we get deeper in September, it typically cools. Now, we purchased fans last year. We have some industrial hurricane fans that actually did okay today in making the building bearable. I went to Holy Trinity, and I remember the good old days where there was no air conditioning anywhere. And every day I came here and sweltered in the heat. But that only lasts for a couple of weeks. We have also outfitted every classroom with 2 ceiling fans, and those ceiling fans are practically new, and they work great. We have purchased window fans, enough for every single classroom, in addition to the fans that are already in there. Some of the classrooms without AC were actually very cool today, and I have confidence they will be tomorrow. But tomorrow's going to be a hot day, and I want everybody to be prepared for that. Because we're out of uniform, your student can dress cooler for the building tomorrow. Because I saw a lot of kids today that were wearing pants. Probably wouldn't do that tomorrow, as I believe it'll be in the upper 80s. In addition to that, a lot of our students have personal fans that we have purchased for them. They don't work all that great. It's more of a gadget or gift that we gave to them, but it is something. We want to use everything in our arsenal to cool the building down as much as we can. Now, tomorrow we will have convocation and we'll be in our auditorium. And we've already been looking at how we can keep that room cool. Now that's at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it won't be as hot then, but we still want to make sure that we do everything we can to cool that room off, and students are comfortable enough to go to school. Next, in about 7 or 8 weeks, we typically would give a progress report detailing to parents how students are doing academically. I'm not going to send out a progress report this year. We're sending out a report card. First quarter report cards will be coming out in mid-October, and I want all parents to read their students' report card. Last year, we had less than 50% attendance during parent-teacher conferences. Many parents called us and asked, can I see my student's report card a month after they went out? Parents, I need you guys to know how well your students or how well your students are not doing in every class they're taking. I don't want parent-teacher conference to be the first time that you are learning how well your students are doing in class. Now we have Schoology, and since we are talking to juniors and seniors today, I know all of you are familiar with it. And you can look at your students' grades anytime you want through Schoology. If you need a tutorial on how to look at your students' grades on Schoology, please email our Director of Technology, Mr. Jonathan Sarasi, and we'll put that in the chat box tonight. I want all the parents to keep tabs on how their students are doing in school. Another major topic are course schedules. Back in July, each of you got a course schedule for your student. However, in between that time, we have switched over to a new system. We are no longer using Rediker, the system that we've used for several years, that in some cases annoyed some of our parents when a student was late for class or for school, and was somewhat outdated. We have upgraded to Infinite Campus, which your students will also get to know a little bit more about starting tomorrow. Because of this, we found some glitches in some of the schedules. The good news is they're all being fixed. Matter of fact, the senior schedules have been fixed and can be picked up tomorrow in the main office, good to go for the first day of school. About 70% of our junior schedules have also been fixed, and the remaining that have not will be fixed before lunchtime. What that means is that most of your students that are here at Holy Trinity, juniors and seniors, may end up going to a class tomorrow that they won't have on Thursday. That doesn't mean that they're not going to have that class. It means that they might have that class in a different period. These technical glitches happen sometimes. And another thing that's exacerbated it is that many of our students simply like to change their schedules. Over 40% of our juniors last year, when they came to see their counselor to get scheduling preferences, missed that meeting. So we chose their classes for them. And like every year, a lot of students didn't like the classes that we chose. So today, and I'm assuming tomorrow and maybe Thursday, they'll be coming in to change their schedules. Our goal is to make sure that every student's schedule is accurate and has the classes that they want to take outside of their graduation requirements before the end of the week. And that's common, and that's what we typically do every year. So no need for any alarms about course schedules. In addition to that, seniors, Senior night is approaching. That is September 8th, 2021 at 6 o'clock. At that meeting, our parents and seniors will get their first workshops on college financial aid, scholarships, what happens after you get to college, and what can impact your financial aid then. Very, very important. And I say that because I've worked in colleges for many years, and I've seen what happens to students who lose their financial aid. It's almost like getting kicked out of school because there's no way to be able to go to school without it. It's a very important meeting. In addition to that, we want to talk about all the perks that come with being a senior at Holy Trinity. All the things that you can have access to. We'll have senior week in May and June, where students will be able to pick and choose what activities and events they want to use leading up to graduation. We're going to start that on September 8th, 2021 at 6 o'clock in our auditorium. All parents are welcome to attend. All seniors, I hope you do attend. I had some questions about service learning hours. As of right now, we have suspended service learning hours for obvious reasons, at least for the fall. And it's really all because of COVID. It is a Herculean task in terms of monitoring it, but we have suspended it just for the fall. We'll revisit it again in the spring. All right, we have some questions, and I'm gonna go ahead and read them off. You may have this question also. First, I am concerned. I observed some students with no masks, as well as some staff. Even with vaccinations, there have been breakthrough infections. We are already seeing positive cases in other schools. What is the criteria for school to go remotely should many kids be infected? Great question. First, let me answer the first part of it. I actually did not see that. First part of today and yesterday, we had freshmen in the building. Not one staff member or faculty member reported to me that they had to correct the student on their masks. Now, I wasn't everywhere in the building all day, so I didn't see that. If a parent did, we apologize for that because we've been very, very clear with students. It's a continuation of last year where all students know that they have to keep a mask on all day. As far as what is the criteria to get to remote learning, it's a great question, and it's probably going to be the biggest topic we talk about at the next Archdiocese Principal and President meeting. I have already reached out to the Archdiocese for guidance on this, and I was curious to know if any other schools have chosen to go to remote learning. We have learned that not one Catholic school within the Archdiocese has done so as of yet. Many of them have already started. However, things do change. And as the weather cools, more and more people will be remaining indoors. We are monitoring this heavily every single week. Now, the good news is that Chicago is actually doing fairly well with vaccinations. I believe we are now over 60% of the city is fully vaccinated. That number will continue to go up as the fall semester continues. So we are very happy about that. In addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, almost 100% of our staff and faculty are vaccinated. And based on a survey that we did this summer, we are anticipating roughly 80% of our students being fully vaccinated by tomorrow. So that does offers us some good news and some hope that none of our students, or at least 80% of them so far, have anything to worry about regarding the virus. Now, there have been some breakthrough infections, yes. And unfortunately, with this Delta variant, breakthrough infections are becoming a little bit more common, albeit still rare. When this information is gathered, we will report back to parents on contingency plans for remote learning. Next, I am on the verge of not sending my child to school tomorrow because, from what I've seen, school was not taking any precautions at all when I walked into the building with my child. My child told me that during the ID pictures that were taken today, there was no social distancing, as well as the school was very hot. Are students supposed to be wearing masks when it is so hot in the building? As well, if anyone catches COVID, will there be any contact tracing done? So a lot in this question. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't see that, and that was not reported to me or to President Bob. Now, these are high school students, and it was the first day where many of them saw each other for the first time. Almost 70% of our juniors last year were e-learners. And they were also out from March to June of 2020. So as I mentioned, it's been about 18 months since many of them have laid eyes on the other. So there may have been some social distancing violations. As I've mentioned, we will do the very best we can in keeping the school and the students separate. In class, it is a lot easier to do. Even in some assemblies, it's easier to do. When students are consorting with one another, whether it be in the halls or whether it be in a bathroom, whether it be in some other place, we have told them to remain distant from one another. And if we have to, we will apply discipline to this to ensure that students do stay apart. The heat. Now, I know I talked about the heat earlier. We are going to do the very best that we can. But the first couple of weeks of school are typically hot. And what we also do is that students who are in classes on the third floor or even the second floor, we relocate those classes to rooms that do have air conditioning when they are available. As I mentioned, a lot of our fans, for whatever reason today in some of the classrooms, were there, but not on. This was in part because the ceiling fans were on and did cool the room to some degree. Tomorrow, all fans available in the class and in the building will be on all day. Many of them are still on right now. Contact tracing. We will do contact tracing this year, as we did last year. What about students who may contract COVID and possibly be out for a month, as it doesn't always go away in 2 weeks with no proper instruction or material given? Believe it or not, this already was happening, not with COVID, but with many other things. Now, every year we get students who have either a medical concern or perhaps was in an accident or have mental health difficulties and challenges, and they're out a while from school. What we've done in those situations and what we will do with COVID is that we will use technology to send those students their work and as much instruction as we can through their Chromebooks. When I was here, I actually caught the chicken pox when I was a high school student. I was out a week and a half, and I had no technology then. Actually had someone come to my house and bring the information that I needed for class. It does happen. Students have surgeries. Students have other medical concerns that do keep them out for more than a week. That occurs every year. Now with COVID, we haven't had any cases where a student had it and they were out more than 10 days. We typically got a negative test from their parents or from them within the 7 to 10 day period when it came to COVID. We would get a negative test and then they would be invited back into the building at that time. Some show positive up to 3 months. What happens then? They will not be able to attend class until they can submit a negative result. We have not seen that, and we certainly don't hope for that. 3 months is possible. In those cases, we will continue to send instruction via technology to them. We will email them, we will use Schoology, we will call them, because it's not just about instruction, but we want to also make sure that they're doing okay. Any student that has contacted COVID here at Holy Trinity has gotten a phone call or an email from me checking up on their medical status. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of questions regarding the heat. As I mentioned, we will have all cooling devices available to us tomorrow. If you are feeling like it's not safe to bring your student into the building tomorrow because of the heat, that is okay. That is certainly your right as a parent. If that's a way that you feel like you are protecting them, by all means, feel free to do so. What I can assure you of is that the building is taking every precaution to keep the building as cool as possible. Uniforms at Zimke's are on back order. If the uniforms are not in by next week, how will this be handled by the school? If you are not in uniform next week because of a back order, please let us know that. We can verify that with Zimke's, and once that's verified, the student does not have to come into the school with their uniform until they get there. Okay, how will attendance be handled with kids that are getting sick? Will there be leniency, especially for those students that need to quarantine? The answer is yes. All absences due to COVID are excused and will not count against any student. Those students can quarantine. We will send their work home to them, and they can do their work from home. What is Infinite Campus? Infinite Campus is our student database system. That's where all of our students' information lies, their health records, their course schedule. What we had last year was Rediker. All we have done is updated it to Infinite Campus, which is our new database system. Will students get mask breaks other than lunch? We want all of our students to be in a mask, and I understand it. It is tough wearing a mask all day. It's tough for me, and I try to role model it to students on a daily basis. Now, students can obviously go to the bathroom and take a break. We have allowed that because we also want our students to wash their hands as often as possible through the day. But if they're in a class or if they're going through the hallway, we do want them to wear their mask. We've asked them about this, and they have told us that because they have gotten so used to it, hasn't been a problem. Now, a lot of parents are reporting today that students weren't wearing masks. We will ensure that they do, as much as we can. 7 to 10 days without any e-learning seems like a punishment for kids that do get sick. My concern is that in fear of falling behind, students will come in even if they test positive. Will this policy change? No student can come into the building with a positive test. That policy will not change. The 7 to 10 day guideline is from the Center of Disease Control. To my knowledge, all schools, not just in Chicago, but across the country, are using a 7 to 10 day quarantine for any student that comes down with the virus. Since the students don't have to wear uniforms this week, does that mean they don't have to wear gym uniforms as well this week? That is correct. I noticed on the calendar, it says in-person and online parent-teacher conferences. How will that work? Great question, Teresita. We did online parent-teacher conferences last year. I was very worried about it. Turns out it worked beautifully. All of our teachers were adamant in keeping that function. We wanted to keep it in large part because a lot of our parents are busy, work late into the evening, and we wanted to give them an option where they didn't have to come into the building. However, some parents prefer to come into the building. They prefer to see the teacher and their student in person. So basically what that means, Ms. Cruz, is that parents have the option to do both. How would we know if there was a glitch or not? I'm assuming that is because of parent-teacher conferences. We have not had any such glitches. Ms. Cruz, if you are talking about something else, please feel free to clarify. And what is back to school night? Back to school night is a night here at Holy Trinity. I can get the date for that for you guys before this call is over. We invite parents back into the building to tour, to see your students' classes, to meet some of the administrators in the building. All parents are welcome. Does that mean that tomorrow will be excused if my child does not attend due to heat? The answer to that question is yes. How is the locker situation going to be handled since students will be in such close quarters with each other during passing period? To my knowledge, lockers are not together. We don't have two lockers together for many of our students. And so we do that to try to maintain some level of distance. Are parents and students obligated to self-report to the school if they are positive? I don't want to say obligated, but I do think that there is a moral imperative to let the school know that your student one is positive, and that if your student is positive, that they should remain home. Please do not send your student to the building if you know for a fact that they are positive. That is one of the worst things that a parent can do to this community. Please keep your students home if they're positive and if they are presenting symptoms. Will there be any leniency with dress code in the wintertime when the classrooms do get a bit colder? Will the students be able to wear a Holy Trinity sweatshirt over their uniform? Absolutely. Zemke's has a sweater and a pullover. And this is a point of emphasis this year. So I'm glad this question came up. Parents, when we get into about October, the weather will cool. I need all of you to ensure that they have a sweater and or pullover, a Holy Trinity one, so that they remain in uniform throughout the day. If they do not have that, and they have on a Nike jacket, they are out of uniform and will be disciplined. So I'm asking all of you now, you got a couple months to do this because it's not cold right now. Make sure you purchase a sweater or the pullover for your students. Will HT have a homecoming dance this year? It is on our calendar to have a dance. But obviously, all events, particularly ones that will have students in close contact, we will be monitoring COVID-19 status and gaining recommendations from the CDC and from the Archdiocese on guidance of if we should continue on with those events. If it gets to a point where it's not a good idea, we will either cancel or reschedule when things are better. Can students use their book bags outside of the locker to avoid being close to someone? This is a good question, and this has been coming up in our meetings. Students may use book bags in Holy Trinity. However, I've instructed all teachers to find appropriate locations for book bags. For some classes, that's going to be around the walls. For other classes, if there's room on the back of the chair or underneath the desk. What we are attempting to avoid is a fire hazard. If there was an emergency in the building, we want all aisles in the classrooms unimpeded. Next question, how's passing periods being handled? While HD is smaller, I saw a video of a high school with crowded hallways. HT hallways are small. Will there be staff clearing hallways? Not necessarily staff, but faculty. Myself, the assistant principal, and the dean will be in the hallways more this year for this particular reason, to ensure students are readily going to class and not hanging out in the hallways. Next question, I wanted to know how we would know if our child had a glitch in their personal schedule or not. Should we just tell our students to go to the office to get their schedule, even if we feel their schedule was correct? The answer to that question is yes. I have been informed that all senior schedules are correct. I'm very concerned with students and some staff members not using masks or social distancing during ID orientation. It seems that the precautionary measures have not been adhered to. How could we be secure that our child will be protected? I don't understand how some didn't have masks and how this was allowed, or why you won't notify. Who was supervising? It feels like more supervision is needed. If this occurred today, why wasn't this brought to your attention? To my knowledge, it wasn't brought to my attention because there were no reported sightings of students out of a mask or not social distancing in the ID portion of our orientation. The ID portion occurred in our largest room. We did that on purpose. We know all students have to get an ID. We know all juniors and seniors were coming today, so we put them there. I went down there twice. I too had to take an ID photo. The entire time I was there, I'm sorry, I just didn't see that. None of our supervisors saw that either. Any student without a mask would have either been given one or would have been asked to leave if they refused to put one on. My child will be bringing antibacterial wipes and hand sanitizer. I assume there will be in class. It is a good idea for each student to wipe desk and chair before using. We agree. We have been doing that, either the student or the teacher. If students don't go in tomorrow, as you said, it will be an excused absence. Do I need to call in the attendance office? Yes, you still need to call into the attendance office because we don't know if you're coming in or not coming in for whatever purpose. We do document the reason on why your student chose not to come in. I will direct our attendance office to excuse any students who do not want to come in because of the heat. So there's no reason to worry, but you do still need to call us. If you don't, and your student doesn't come in, it will be marked as an unexcused absence. All parents, as you did in preschool, as you did in grade school, as you will have to do in high school. Your student is not in the building, you must let us know why. Do all classrooms have air cleaners? I'm assuming that also could be substituted for air filters. Yes, all air filters will be on tomorrow. From what I had seen as I walked in with my child, there were many people with masks, but they were on their chin, not covering their face at all. This was very worrying for me as a parent, as well as seeing some teachers not fully covering their face as well. To my knowledge, during the junior and senior orientation, most, if not all of our teachers were in their rooms. You may have mistaken some of them for some of our staff. Now, our staff definitely knows better. And when I checked in with them again, didn't see it. All of them wore a mask for the entire time during orientation. Students who put their mask on their chin, yep, happens all the time. We do correct them when they do that. Now, one other thing I want to say about today. Today was an organized activity, but only to a point. Students got their Chromebooks, their ID badges, and their locks. That's different from going to class or to lunch with a full 100% faculty and staff supervising them at all times. This was never an issue last year, and I believe that was the reason why. Today was the first day many of them were back. My assumption is they were happy to see one another. They were excited. They wanted to have some fun before class started, and perhaps the mask came down a little bit. I do see that sometimes, but I didn't see them off. And beginning tomorrow, all students, if a mask is only halfway up their face, will be corrected. And if they don't correct, will be disciplined. Wearing mask on chin or covering their mouth only is not correct. I agree. And as I just mentioned, that'll be corrected tomorrow. Will there be more time in between classes to get to other classes? 4 minutes is not enough. 4 minutes is pretty standard, not just here at HT, but to most high schools. Some high schools do go 5. We go 4, in large part because we don't want to lengthen the actual class day. In all my years affiliated with Holy Trinity, 4 minutes has been enough. The building is small, and to get to room 101 to 106 takes about 15 seconds. If going to the 3rd floor, about 1.5 minutes. We've timed this out. My student took the ID picture. When will they receive their actual ID badge? They should get them this week in their homerooms. I have heard of schools in Illinois that have started school and are already having outbreaks. Yes, that's true. I am very worried because I have people at home who cannot afford to catch COVID because of their health conditions. At what point will Holy Trinity shut down if this happens? These are conversations that we are now having, not just internally, but with the Archdiocese and other schools. As I mentioned earlier this summer, the poll was taken with all of our Archdiocesan schools, and none of them had chosen to go back to remote learning. I'm not sure if CPS is. I haven't kept up with them, but we have chosen not to. Again, we are monitoring this situation. In terms of a shutdown, no threshold has been given yet. But as if this situation worsens, threshold will be given and parents will be notified of what it is, as you were last year. Before school was let out March of 2020, students were able to wear any shoe. Could you confirm what type of shoes students can wear this year? Students can wear any shoe. The issue is color. It must be a solid color, one color. I want to be very clear about this because the student that comes in a shoe that has 3 colors, I want the parents to know we told you and them one color. Now, typically students are in great uniform shape. It's a black shoe, a brown shoe, a tan shoe, or an all-white shoe. That is outlined on our uniform guidelines. It has been the case for years here at Holy Trinity. How is social distancing between lockers? All students will not be right next to another student in a locker. What about students who couldn't come in today for ID day? What date will this be made up for? That date will be sometime this week. All students will be notified if they have not gotten their ID photo of when that date will be. Last year, when there were positive cases, the school went remote. Is this the same policy? Will this also be in effect as it was in around the holidays, as it was last year as well? At this time, there are no plans to shut down during the holidays. There were positive cases in the school last year, but I will tell you, Holy Trinity, and this is not hyperbole, probably had the strictest shutdown policy of any school in the entire city of Chicago. We shut down in the fall after 1 case, just 1. We're a small school. We wanted to take every precaution, but we were also learning about COVID. We were monitoring that situation. And as the year progressed, we flexed that 1 case into 3. So we had cases in the building that were active, but we did not shut down. Shutting the school down we saw had horrendous effects on academics. Students stopped turning in their homework. Students weren't as prepared for exams. Students who were once 3.7 GPAs had their worst semester since being here. We want to limit shutting the school down if at all necessary. One of the ways we do this is for students to get vaccinated. Now, we have learned that the Delta variant is providing the greatest percentage of what they call breakthrough cases. These are students coming down and contracting COVID, even though they are vaccinated. However, we have also found that when that occurs, students are not going to the hospital, and absolutely, students are not dying tragically. The vaccine tends to make the Delta variant into a cold, a mild version of it. You may have some symptoms, but it does seem to prevent serious illness. So our best defense, and I'm sure this is the case at every school, for one, get vaccinated. Number two, ensure that all members of your household are vaccinated. Number three, we are going to be in masks every day, all day. Number four, we want the building clean. Number five, students will be allowed to wash their hands. Hand sanitizer is in every classroom as well as in every entrance. And number six, if your student is not feeling well, do not send them in the building. And if those symptoms persist, get a COVID-19 test. They're now available in CVS and Walgreens to take home. And just about every public health agency in Chicago, you can get tested there. I want to know why there is heat in the building while the school is in session. Okay, this is from Patricia's parents. Well, it's hot outside. So in any building, if it's hot outside, the building too will be hot. We're doing the very best that we can to cool the building. And that's about what we can do. What I've learned through me being a student here and me being the principal, this lasts for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. After that, the building cools and it's not an issue. Is there anything that students are not allowed to wear this week? Students are not allowed to wear any appropriate clothing. Parents, if you are unsure about what your student is wearing, have them change. While there is no uniform, we don't want students coming in with ripped apparel or items on their tops or shirts that are dispiriting or negative or gang related, nothing like that. Just keep it normal. Today, the kids did great with that. Why do students need to wear solid color shoes when in prior years they were able to wear any shoe that they liked? The solid color shoe is part of our uniform policy, and we will adhere to that policy. I, as a parent, feel safe sending my kids to HT. I think you guys are doing an amazing job and have done everything you can to follow protocol. My kids are vaccinated and I have no concern. I support and salute HT. Thank you for all you do. We got to get that parent some free tuition or something, Tim. Great compliment. Thank you. It says anonymous, but thank you, whoever you are. We are doing our best would like to remind our parents of something. Last year, for the entire year, August through June, 2 student infections. 2, we knew schools that had 9 within the first few weeks. We had 2 infections in the building of students the entire year. Holy Trinity did well with this last year. We will do well again with this year. Salute to all the parents last year that when your students were at home, you didn't send them somewhere where they could contract the virus. And wherever they went with you, they wore masks. That they washed their hands just as much as at home as they did here in the school. And when their parents told them to stay in, they did. Thank you, parents, for partnering with us to keep our students safe. Mr. Bates, Mr. Bob, and staff cannot be babysitting all of these young adults. It's up to parents to educate our children to COVID and masks. Holy Trinity did a great job last year. Keep up the good man. Another compliment. Thank you very much. We do work hard at this. It is a partnership between you and us. Today, there were kids that did better during the shutdown that are having anxiety returning because of toxic situations in the school prior to COVID. Will there be supports for them? Great question. I have increased the number of counselors in the building from 3 to 5. That does not include our school counselors. If I included them, we are at 7. We have also boosted our academic support. Students who might be struggling, whether it be academically, or that they're struggling academically because they're not doing well psychologically or socially. We had a sophomore orientation this year that was much more structured than in past years because we understood that our sophomores, last year's freshmen, didn't have a typical year where they could make friends and socialize. Last year, we opened the building in the weekend to ensure that our students got that. Wanted to start the year off right with doing that as well. There were kids that did better. Okay, answered that one. I was wondering why my child was on the principal's list, which is having a 3.9 and higher, I believe, and the report card showed a 3.8. Taking honors classes and higher should be weighted, but it was not. It probably was. If there was a mistake, please bring that in and we'll fix it. Remote learning was honestly the best option for my child. They did so much better at home than they would at school. They were much more on top of their work because they were able to focus much more. That's wonderful to hear. But I'll be honest, that was not the majority of our students. I walked in on classes where I could hear video games, a TV, the radio. Students had access to their phones. Students were taking care of siblings. Students were taking care of elderly grandparents. That was the typical experience of our e-learning students last year, on top of e-learning being the largest percentage of our students who came down with COVID. Got to the point where we had to protect the building from some of our e-learning athletes because they were contracting the virus outside the building and then bringing it inside the building. So I'm happy to hear remote learning was a success for this parent. It wasn't for everybody. And the precautions regarding the COVID are not as monitored during the entire day as it is here in the building. Are venture cards still being offered? What if my son has one from previous school he was attending? Will they be able to activate it at HT? Venture cards are being offered, and yes, we can activate it. The Jew rule wasn't ever brought up in 2019, 2020. Does this mean my child and myself will have to spend more money on shoes because they can't wear the ones they have? To my knowledge, we have not changed the uniform policy in several years. My guess is that that part of the uniform policy was not enforced. It is enforced this year. So like any school supply or any uniform part, all students must adhere to the uniform. How can you guys purchase air conditionings for each classroom, but get fans? Great question. To my knowledge, the building itself, from an electrical standpoint, isn't equipped to have every single room air conditioned. What we need to be careful of is a brownout, where the air conditioning that we do have doesn't go out. Tim, if there's anything that you want to add about that question, feel free to do so.
Sure, Quincy. We have heard these comments before, so we have done a thorough investigation and looked at many different options to get cool air and air conditioning in the building. The bottom line is the building was built in 1929, and there are no simple solutions here. The ones that we have looked at are problematical at best and incredibly expensive, into the $1 million range. So we're still going to look, we're still going to do our best. We thought on a short-term basis, getting the fans in the building, putting the purifiers in would at least get us through this difficult time. We always are looking to improve the conditions of learning in the building. But right now, air conditioning seems to be one that has escaped us. It just is not an easy thing to do or a cost-effective thing to do at this point.
Next question, given you are meeting with the Archdiocese, if they agree to remote learning, would you provide us with that option? That's a good question, but a lot goes into it. It's a very complex interweaving of many different factors to go back to remote learning. As I mentioned earlier, grades tanked during remote learning. Our students, many of them want to go to college. They want to be able to be academically eligible and be able to get in to the college of their choice. Many of our students took a step back last year. And for some of our seniors, college is an open question, specifically because of grades. So to go to remote learning, there's an understanding that that might academically hamper and or hinder many of our students. In addition to that, any student that was remote learning last year and this year, if we did go to that option, would not be allowed in the building, not for sports, not for clubs, not for anything, because that became where we caught all of our COVID cases with the exception of the 2 in the building. 90% of our COVID cases last year were from e-learning. E-learning kind of scared some of us, faculty, staff, and students in the building. So we want to be cautious with it before we make that decision. It is also very hard on our teachers. Our teachers last year were asked to teach simultaneously to students in front of them and students at home. Ladies and gentlemen, that was difficult. Keeping a student engaged while they're at home, in some cases, was next to impossible last year. And what correlated with that were grades tanking. Along with grades tanking, less than 50% of our parents were even coming to parent-teacher conference. Many of us were calling parents, begging them, hey, we need to talk about your students' grades. Perhaps it would be better that they come in the building and have access to not only their teachers, but all academic support. Some parents did do that and grades improved. Other parents didn't and grades stayed low. We had to keep about 6 students that did not graduate last year because their grades tanked. And e-learning was probably the biggest culprit. So we are weighing the benefits against the minuses. In theory, yes, it should keep your students safer. But we didn't see that last year as much as we would have liked. Did grades go down? Yes, very much so. Now, if we get that guidance from the Archdiocese, we will have another town hall and we will talk about it. As of right now, we don't have it, but we will be meeting with them shortly in another week or so. I agree, you're doing better than CPS right now. Thank you for addressing our issues and concerns. Unlike CPS, as parents, we just want transparency. I totally agree. Parents, you will always get transparency from me. Ms. Thornton, please don't go to e-learning. Yes. You know, we learned also, our juniors and seniors last year, they chose e-learning for themselves and parents allowed it. So if students have the power to choose e-learning for themselves, many of them will pick e-learning. Who wants to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get in the bus and come to school? How do students sign up for ACT Prep? We have 2 ACT Prep classes, and more information will be coming out regarding that. In terms of that decision-making, we will keep all parents involved. First day for ACT is Saturday, September 11th at 8 o'clock. If your student is signed up for it, we'll see them then. Parents, let's make sure our high schoolers are doing their part, praying for a safe and successful school year. We are doing that as well. If I keep my child home because they're not feeling well, would she be required to have a doctor's note or a COVID test prior to returning to school? If not, how would the absence be handled? Excellent question. This is how we handled that last year. If you let us know that your child was sick or not feeling well, they have to get a COVID-19 test, because symptoms is what informs us that your child potentially may have COVID. So if you're seeing that at home, 1, they got to quarantine. 2, they need to bring us a negative test before they come back into the building. 3, it's our way of keeping the entire community safe. I had no issue with e-learning as a parent. I work at home, have no other children or pets at home, felt definitely safer. Yeah, it did work for some parents and for some students. Some students kept their grades up, and even some rarer cases even increased their GPA. But I will tell you, it was a small percentage. We averaged last year about half the school appearing on the DNF list. The year before, let's say in November, December, when the semester is about to wrap up, they're talking about maybe less than 10% of the school. That is an incredible jump, an alarming jump academically. Remote learning seems like a last resort. I don't want my son working from home. He did much better in the building. That was the experience of almost all of our students who started out e-learning, but ended up in the building. We saw a gradual incline in their academic performance. In-person is better, I agree as a parent. However, I chose that last year due to the pandemic. Safety is a top priority. It is my top priority. Parents, please know, if COVID went bad, we're gonna have a town hall and I will give all contingency plans if COVID went bad for you to choose how you want instruction delivered to your child. As of right now, we're not there. And I hope we never get there. Are teachers giving assignments the first few days of school? Maybe. I have talked to teachers about homework. We're all back in building now, so homework will be given. I am a believer in homework. I'm not a believer in excessive homework, but homework is nothing more than another word for practice. This is especially true for our kids in math and science. They have to do it over and over again to learn and to do well in these courses. Tell you what I don't want. I don't want any kids coming out of Holy Trinity with a diploma, going to college, not prepared. This is a college prep school. We will challenge them. Number one driver of grades going down last year, students not doing homework. Rapid tests are not accurate. PCR test, which is the one that takes about 1 to 3 days for results, is the one that students and staff should be taking. Our COVID testing provider offers both. They too have told us that. So they get the PCR and the rapid tests, and we compare. My daughter gets bad allergies sometimes. Will she need a doctor's note on record so she won't be sent home for runny nose and sneezing? For all allergies, in particular those that are really bad for your student, yes, we should have documentation in the building. I, as a parent, found e-learning worked. Unfortunately, this is not the same for everyone due to different family situations. As a parent, I am 100% for e-learning choice if it is needed. Well said. Okay, I just answered about 71 questions. Do we have any more? Will you be telling the office that attendance is excused for heat? Yes.
On this side or that side?
What is the deadline for students trying to switch their classes? Great question. As they will find out in college, the first week of school, which is only 3 days long, a student can change their schedule if they want to without any penalties. They got really 4 days. Many of our students, in particular juniors and seniors, saw their counselors today. So they had today, they'll have tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. By Friday, students have to make a decision. Now, last year, we were very lenient with this. Students were changing their schedules as late as early October. We cannot be lenient anymore. At some point, decision has to be made. In large part, that's life. Next week, a student can change their schedule, but only with my signature, your signature, the signature of the business office, a $75 fee, which will be enforced this year. And that's only for next week. After next Friday, whatever classes they got, that's the classes they got. No other changes will be made. My son has a 504 plan, and it wasn't acknowledged until the end of the school year. He wasn't given the proper time. How will this be handled with him having extra time for work and test? Parents, when these things happen, please let me know. I go to the staff. No one has heard of this at all. If we did hear about it, we change it. Now, any student with an IEP or a medical 504, all accommodations must be met. I have spoken to the teachers at length about this, that this is a legal issue, that cannot be compromised. And I have also told them to lean towards leniency if we have students with accommodations. What that means is, if they get 30 extra minutes for a test, and it took them 32 minutes, that's okay. Now, we're not gonna give them more than that, but that's okay. We want our students, if they have accommodations, to have all access to resources and everything they need to be successful. Now, our teachers will go off the letter. So if there's an accommodation that a student is asking for that's not on that letter, they will not get it. If they end up needing it, then we need to see additional documentation substantiating that. That is the law, and we will abide by it. We want the students to also do that as well. Are students able to wear solid color Crocs? No, no Crocs. We want a regular shoe. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'm going to pass it back to Mr. Bob. First, hopefully, I think we got one. I did make some schedule changes with my child earlier this week. When will he receive that schedule? If he's a senior, he can get the schedule whenever he wants. Just come to the main office and we'll give it to him. If he's a junior, his schedule probably is also done. If not, should be done by lunch. Should be done by lunch. And the shoe dress policy be excused until Friday since it's dressed down. Yes, it's dressed down. It is dressed down Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The shoe policy is connected to the uniform, and that'll start on Monday.
All right.
Mr. Bob, take over.
Thanks, Dr. Payton. I think there's a couple words that were mentioned earlier this evening: communication and transparency. We have emphasized many, many times that the education of your son or daughter is a partnership between us. There's nothing more than we want for them to succeed and do well. Working together really goes a long way towards assuring that. So I applaud Dr. Payton. That was, I an hour and a half on the witness stand. But that shows the commitment, I think, of all of us here at Holy Trinity. We want to make sure that you are fully aware of what's happening with your son or daughter's education. We want to answer your questions. We want to make sure that you know how much we value this partnership. So we are excited. It's the beginning of a new year. It is a return from what we had last year, which was a hybrid type of education. We are really ready to get out there and do our Holy Trinity thing with your students. We are very, very excited, and we welcome the give and take that you have provided to us tonight and every night. So keep the lines of communication open. If there's something that you did not have answered tonight, please, Dr. Payton, Mr. Jefferson, myself, or any of the teachers, the Dean of Students, Mr. Malloy, whichever person that you think can be best answered for your questions, let us know. And if not, we'll refer you to the right person. Finally, remember that we value the decision you made to send your child to Holy Trinity. We are excited about the year. We will do our very best, and we are looking for an outstanding year this year, which starts tomorrow. Let's be ready tomorrow to start the school year optimistic, positive, and looking forward to the future. God bless you all. Thank you for your time. And we will meet again and talk again soon. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.